My name is Justin Swan. I'm the creative director here in Ubisoft Montreal, and I've been leading the project for Rainbow Six Mobile for the past roughly 3.5 years now. And we're finally reaching what I like to call the start line, since we will be having a living, breathing game that's going on for a long time after release. But everyone's just really excited to finally be announcing the game. I first started working on the project, and by start working on, that was more like start thinking about it, start playing Siege every single day, all the time, to start, how is it making me feel? Where is it too difficult? How can I make it easier for players to come into the game? Because we really cared a lot about accessibility for players. And I'd say that was now probably almost 4 years ago, the very first beginning of the game. We started building the studio here in Montreal about 3.5 years ago. And it was just me sitting on the floor with the Siege guys, mostly just talking to them, and working on recruiting a really expert team, not just in mobile, but also in AAA HD games. We've got some great people from within different teams at Ubisoft, but from all over the globe. We've got many different studios working with us from everywhere. And it was 3.5 years ago. Now here we are, and I think we finally actually really pulled off something pretty special. We heard about it a lot. We heard about it from the community quite many times about, wouldn't this be kind of cool to have on a phone, to be able to take it with me, to be able to play anywhere. One thing is, if you're going to play Siege, you're sitting down for a little while, and you're definitely locking in on your computer, you're locking in on your TV, and maybe you'd like to play a little quick session. Maybe you'd like to play 8 minutes waiting for the bus or something like this. So that's one of the big reasons. Also, myself, I'm mostly a mobile gamer. I don't have a lot of time to sit down and really put the time into those big console titles, PC titles. So for me and for a lot of the team, it's a chance to make the game we want to play. And I think that's one of the things we're most excited about, is now that we're getting it out there into the public's hand, I can just decide to go match make a game anytime I want. And for me, again, because of the short bursts, we've really worked on making the sessions as short as possible, if you want them to be short. You can take a long session also, but things like load times, matchmaking times, and what I'm actually really addicted to right now is our single round matches, where you're randomly matched up with either attack, just a round of attack, or just a round of a defense. 6 minutes and you're done, basically, and that includes matchmaking, pre-match flow, post-match flow, core gameplay, and that's like really nice, like bite-size sieging. So that feels pretty cool. This is something I looked at quite a lot whenever I first started working on the project and thinking about what are we really going to make here. And a lot of ideas flew around. Would it even be, I don't know, a top-down strategic shooter or something like this? But the more you start really looking at it, and you start looking at the market and what phones can do today and what players are hungry for, and you notice how great Siege is, as you know, it's clear, like, we need to bring Siege. We need to bring real Siege to mobile devices. And so it's quite similar. You have the same kind of operators, the same operators with the same abilities. First-person shooter, attack and defend. Destruction is in the game. The full destruction from the maps are there. Whenever we release our first test, we'll be having bank and border in the game. We really try to find the most iconic and well-balanced maps when we look at like esports stats and things like this. So it's very similar. I think if you're a Siege player, you're gonna really feel at home. One of the really cool things we talk about is if you're a Siege player and you want to come play the game, you could play on the bus ride home, for example, and you could be playing on bank and discover a new tactic or a new strategy or a new hatch to help you get into CEO office or something, let's say. And then whenever you get home and you decide to want to hop back onto Siege on your PC, you're actually going to be better at the game. All the knowledge that you gained from playing Rainbow Six Magnum will actually help you and transfer over to Rainbow Six Siege. For us, it was all about inspiration and adaptation. So looking at Siege, looking at what's really great there, looking at what works. One of the really cool things about being here in the same building, in the same studio as the Rainbow Six Siege team, although we're our own entirely different team, is we can talk to those guys, we can look at their data and their stats and how the game performs, learn from their lessons, all these kinds of things. So the first things we do is we look at Siege, we talk to the Siege team, we look at the community, their responses to different things, and then we start prototyping. We prototype a lot of stuff. We really knew we needed to make some innovations and breakthroughs on core gameplay on mobile if this was going to work. Siege is a complex game, more complex than most other, let's say, run-and-gun shooters that you see out there. You've got leaning, which is iconic, and you've got to have that if you're going to have a Siege game. You've got kneeling and proning, rappelling, all the different gadgets and operators and their abilities. Sound is incredibly important in the game. So these are all things that we had to take into consideration. I could talk all day about them and all the prototyping we did and testing we did to try to find breakthroughs. But there's some pretty cool things in the game. I really hope when people play it, they're going to be pretty impressed with some of the breakthroughs in gameplay we've created. It's been a very challenging game to build, which is also why it's so rewarding now that we're here and we've actually managed to build it and make it accessible and make it understandable to players. Usually when I talk about the challenges, they kind of fall into two categories. One is the technical challenge. Siege, it has all these things that make it very hard from a technical perspective to operate on a device. Everything from It's online, real-time PvP competitive, so you've got to have smooth frame rates. We have 60 frames per second on high end, 30 on low end. You have to have server authoritative gameplay so people can't cheat and hack, and the server's actually deciding everything that's going on. You've got 10 different operators with 10 different abilities, all with their own animation systems, and all of that has to be loaded into the game. Being a game that is internal, the close quarter combat, you're always hugging walls and you're really close to things. We knew we wanted to be one of the best looking games out there. That means those walls have to have a very high texture density, which all this stuff takes up memory, takes up CPU power. One last thing to pile on top of that with the technology piece is we're making a game that runs effectively on a PlayStation 1 on low-end device, all the way to a PlayStation 4 on your brand new phones out there. That's the tech you're looking at. But they all play each other. They're all playing at the same time on the same maps with the same operators, meaning the architecture needs to be the same. You can't have a fancy-looking chandelier on the high end and no chandelier on the low end because then the sight lines won't be the same. And all this combines into a pretty crazy technical challenge, but thankfully, as I mentioned earlier, we've got a worldwide crew of just genius developers who have just done some amazing things. We've got even quite a bit of like the kind of tech you would see in open world games. We've actually put into this close quarter combat game just so that we can make each room and every wall and texture and everything as detailed as possible. So that's the tech challenge. Then there's the design challenge. We know Siege is a complex, difficult game. And that's part of the joy of it, is that you can play for 1,000 hours and always get better. But we also know that we're coming into free-to-play mobile where someone can try out your game for free with no strings attached. And with the swipe of a finger, they can instead be on Twitter now. So we really had to make sure the game was accessible as possible to players. And this is why we've spent a lot more time into our onboarding, teaching how to do attack and defend and how that works. There's Siege Academy, which is this great external resource for Siege to learn more in-depth tactics, how to play with the operators, how to play inside the maps. And we're bringing that into the game, actually, and kind of making actual little missions for players to go and play to kind of discover better how does this game work, how does that paper rock scissors complexity of the operator interactions work. So yeah, we faced a lot of challenges, obviously thought about it a lot as all these things I just rattled off. I could go on more and talk about different features like we call it tactical focus on mobile. It's clear that some players really like to play with auto fire on, and that's whenever an enemy enters into your reticle, you'll automatically shoot at them. And it lowers complexity, makes one less input required. But we also knew that considering we want to keep the skill cap high because we are a competitive game, and that's one of the joys of Siege, considering that a Siege player doesn't always want to be shooting at a person if they're in your reticle, you might want to not be noticed at this moment. We knew we couldn't do auto shoot. We didn't want to do auto shoot. So what tactical focus is, if I press and hold the ADS button, the aim down scope button, and hold on to it for a couple seconds, kind of the world around me dims down a little bit, and then the sound dampens as well, and my movement really slows. But now I'm really holding my sight line. And you'll see this in Siege. It's what you see a pro player do. And they're got their line. They really expect a player's going to come down this hallway. They've outthought them. And if the player comes, they're going to get the shot. Maybe a newer mobile player won't be able to pull off that shot. And that's going to be frustrating because they did the right thing. They thought the right way, which is what's important for Siege gameplay, but then they can't pull off the shot. So this tactical focus, although you are sacrificing a bit of vision, a bit of sound, a bit of movement, you will get that shot if you've played the right strategy. And we think that's a pretty cool feature that adds a lot of accessibility to the game, but really feels in the spirit of Siege gameplay. This was a really important thing for us. And of course, we could have gone to third parties who have done more complex first-person shooter mobile games, for example. But Siege being one of our most proud and most cherished brands, a kind of a crown jewel for Ubisoft, we just felt it was very important to keep it internally and be able to make it exactly as we wanted to at the quality bar that we wanted to. We have our first alpha test coming in the next couple months. I can't give an exact date yet right now, but that'll be coming soon, and we'll finally really get to see how a lot of players feel about the game, and that's going to be great. Can't wait for the reactions there. From there, we don't know exactly what's going to happen. A big part of our development process, and we're just entering into this part of the process, which I'm excited about, is listening to players, and that leads into a lot of development, maybe development time. So it's really hard to say exactly when we'll be going worldwide, but we're entering the first stage of being live soon, and that's when player feedback and things like that really start to impact the development of the game a lot more, right? So far, it's been our internal gut feel, our creativity, what do we think will be the best thing? I often say we're about to change from being artists to being scientists. Now we want to study the players, listen to the players, and start developing along that path, and that's just an unknown for us right now.